We continue now at the top of Daf Tazayin Amud Beis in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 16b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing the opinion of Reish Lakish that when it comes to an Amo Ha'ivriya, she goes free with the Misas Ha'av when her father dies. And the Gemara said, if that's the case, why doesn't it say that in the Mishnah? It should say that the Amo Ha'ivriya goes free when her father dies. And the Gemara answered that we don't list Misas Ha'av because it's Ein Lo Kitzvah. It doesn't have a set time. We don't know when the father might die, and so therefore it's not listed. And the Gemara said, but we list Simonim. We say that an Amo Ha'ivriya, she goes free when she has signs of maturity, and that also, it doesn't have a set time. It's possible to have those signs at different points in time. And the Gemara said there is a set time, lemata, as the Gemara said, meaning the lowest, the youngest age. As Rashi says, lemata im hevia lifnei zamana einon simonim. If she brings forth the signs of maturity before the proper age, that's not considered to be simonim. And so therefore it does have a kitzvah in some sense, and that's why that is listed, even though the Misas Ha'av is not listed. And the Gemara says, the Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, ben teisha shonim, shehevi shtei saros, if you have a 9-year-old and he has the 2 hairs of maturity, shuma, that's just considered to be shuma, that's not considered to be real signs of maturity. Mi ben tes shonim v'yom echad, but let's say it's 9 years old and one day, ad yud beis shana v'yom echad, until 12 years in a day, v'odan bo, and we still see those same hairs, so shuma, if it's the same hairs, then we assume also it's shuma, it's not really signs of maturity. Rabbi Yehuda says, Simon, no, that's already a sign. At that age already, it's a sign of maturity. Ben Yud Gimel Shana V'Yom Echad, now if he's 13 years old in a day, so Divrei Akol Simon, everybody agrees it's a Simon. And so the point is that you see that there is a minimum age for these signs of maturity to actually be considered signs of maturity, and that's where it's considered something that has kitzvah. And Rashi explains, Hachi Garsinan Laham Masnisa, here's the proper text of this Brais of Perak Yotzei Dofen and Perak Yotzei Dofen. Ben Teisha Shonim Shehevi Shtei Saros, if he's 9 years old, he has the 2 hairs, Shuma, that's considered Shuma. Mi Ben Tes Shonim V'Yom Echad Ad Yud Beis Shonim V'Yom Echad, from 9 years old in a day to 12 years old in a day, V'Odan Bo, if they're still on him, Shuma, that's also considered Shuma. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer, Simon, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says it's considered a Simon, it's considered a sign of maturity. Ben Yud Gimel Shana V'Yom Echad, 13 years in a day, Divrei HaKol Simon, everyone agrees that it's a sign of maturity. V'Hasam Parach LaBenida, and over there they ask the question in Nida, Amai Nakat Yud Gimel V'Lo Nakat Yud Beis, why does it first talk about 12 years old in a day, and then it moves to 13, it should continue with 12, Umetaris La, the Gemara over there answers it up. Ben Tes Shanim HaKol Modim Shuma, again at 9 years old, everybody agrees it's Shuma. Mi Ben Teisha V'Yad Ben Yud Beis Shana V'Odan Bo, if the hair is still on him in that range of age from 9 to 12, Kishihigia Yud Beis V'Lo Nashru Plugsa, Rashi explains, when he reaches 12 years old, if it hasn't fallen off, that's the machlokus. Avolim Nashru Kodem Yud Beis, now let's say the hair would fall out before he's 12 years old, Lo Polig Rabbi Yossi, then Rabbi Yossi wouldn't even argue. The Gloy Milsa the Lav Simon have it, then everybody agrees it is not a simon, it's not a sign of maturity. Umi Ben Yud Gimel Shana V'Yom Echad Modu Rabbanon, now from 13 years in a day, so from that age already, even the Rabbanon admit, they agree to have a simon, that it is considered a simon Va'afilu Nashru, even if it falls out. Shuma refers to varua belaz, that's like a mole, v'darchel etzameach basar, in other words, on a mole you'll have hair grow, even though that's not a sign of maturity, that can be a hair that's not a sign of maturity. Alma hamevia kodem teisha eino simin, in any case the point is that you see that before 9 years old that's not considered a sign of maturity, and the point is v'yesh l'kitzvah lamata, the point is that the simonim, there is a set time, there's a minimum age you have to reach, and again that's why that is listed as one of the ways that the Amo Ha'ivriya goes free. And the Gemara continues, Mesiv Rav Sheshes asks a question on Reish Lakish from the following Brisa. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Daldid Ma'anikim Lahem, there are 4 ways that an Eved Ivri or Amo Hevriya, that they go free and they get the gift of severance. However, Gimel Be'ish v'Gimel Be'isha, however, only 3 of them apply to a man, meaning 3 of them apply to an Eved Ivri, and 3 of them apply to a woman, 3 of them apply to the Amo Hevriya. V'yata Yochol Lomer Dalid Be'echad, you can't have it that 4 of them apply to either of them, L'fi she'ein simonim be'ish, because one of the 4 is simonim, is signs of maturity, that doesn't apply by Eved Ivri, doesn't apply by the man, so the man only has 3. V'ein Ritzia Be'isha, and there's no piercing of the ear by the woman, by the Amo Hevriya, so again, there's only going to be 3 by the Amo Ha'ivriya. And the Gemara says, V'imisa, now if it's correct what Reish Lakish says, that by the Yom HaIvriya she also goes free with the Misas Ha'av when her father dies. So Nisni Nami Misas Ha'av, so we should also have in the list Misas Ha'av, the death of her father. And so there is a fourth one when it comes to the Yom HaIvriya. And if you're going to say that over here also there really is more than four, there really is more than three by the Yom HaIvriya, we just left out one. But it says there is a total of four, and when you say a number, it can't be that you're leaving something out. If there's a total of four, three apply by a man and three apply by a woman, it can't be that anything was left out. So again, this is a question on Reish Lakish, that Misas Ha'av, the death of her father, should be an additional one. And if you're going to say, like we suggested before, Tana Davar Sheyesh Lo Kitzva Katani, that this Tana is only teaching things which have a kitzvah, which have a set time. V'Davar She'ein Lo Kitzva Lo Katani, but something which is not set, that is not learned in this brisa, and that's why Misas Ha'av is not counted over here. V'Hasimonim, but what about signs of maturity? De'ein Lahem Kitzva, that is something again that does not have a set time. V'Katani, and that is clearly listed in the brisa. It says in the brisa specifically that there's no simonim by an ish, and there's no ritzia by an isha. So you see, we're counting simonim. And the Gemara says further, if you're going to say Hachanami Keder Rav Safra, that here also the reason why we're counting simonim is it is considered to have a set time, like Rav Safra said, like we just said above, that there is a set time in terms of a minimum age for the simonim to count. Va'ika misas adam, but still we have a question, because what about the death of the master? De'ein lo kitzva, that's also not a set time. V'katani, and that is in the list, that's among the four things. And the Gemara says to that, it's not true. Misas adon nami lo katani. Actually, when this brisa is talking about four ways to go free, three by a man and three by a woman, we're actually not counting the misas adon. We're not counting the death of the master. And so the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, what are the four that this brisa is referring to? So what are the four ways of going free that the brisa is referring to? And the Gemara says, shonim v'yovel. So the ones that apply by both the Avid Ivri and the Yom HaIvriya are shonim, or if you serve the 6 years, or yovel, or going free in the yovel year. And then v'yovel shel ritzia, then you also have the yovel year of the Avid Ivri who has his ear pierced. That only applies to the man, to the Avid Ivri. It does not apply to the Yom HaIvriya. And then also v'yom HaIvriya b'simonim. And then the other one that does apply only to Yom HaIvriya and doesn't apply to the Avid Ivri, that's the simonim. That's the signs of maturity. So that's what the brisa meant with the four cases. And the Gemara says, Hachanami mistabra, makes sense to say this. The Katani Sefer, because what does it say at the end of the brisa? It says at the end of the brisa, you can't say there are four by the man or four by the woman, because there's no signs of maturity that set the man free. And there's no piercing of the ear by the woman. Now, if it was true, meaning to say, if we were counting misas ha'adon, so you are going to find four by the woman, because again, you're going to have the misas ha'adon. And the Gemara says, Shema Mino, indeed you see that this is the case, that we are not learning over here Misas Ha'adon. And what then emerges is that the brisa could be following Reish Lakish. It could be again the Yom HaIvriya does go free with the Misas Ha'av when her father dies. And the reason that wasn't listed in this brisa is because we're not listing things that have no kitzvah. And that's why we're also leaving out the Misas Ha'adon, because again the Gemara is now saying that Misas Ha'adon as well is being left out of this brisa. And Rashi explains Shonim v'Yovel, again, the different ways of going free, the 6 years, and Yovel hapogea besoch sheish. We have Yovel that happens within the 6 years. And then we have another Yovel, that's the other one, v'Yovel shel ritzia, the Yovel of the piercing of the ear by the Eved Ivri, v'Yovel hamotzi es anirtza. Again, that's Yovel that allows the nirtza to go free. V'hani chipusha de Yovel kol chad choshe be'apei nafshe. What the Gemara essentially is now arguing is that Yovel is being counted twice. They're being counted separately. The Yovel during the 6 years and the Yovel after the piercing of the ear. And that's what the Gemara says. Hachanam mistabra, makes sense to say this. You almost have to say this. The misas adon lo katani bu, that you're not counting the death of the master, because if we were counting the death of the master, vim isa detana misas adon. If you're going to be counting the death of the master as one of the four, vitarti yovle kechad chashavlu, and both yovels are counted as one. So if that's the case, so isa nami beisha. So then you're going to have by the isha as well. It's going to turn out by the isha as well that you're going to have the misas adon. Umay niu dekamar ein ritzia beisha. So what do we mean to say? There is no ritzia, there's no piercing of the ear by the woman. To velo ritzia nami have a bar anak, because even without the piercing of the ear, that just counts the same yovel as the regular yovel. So that's already being counted by the woman. And so you're going to have four by the Yom HaIvri if you're counting the misas adon. And so therefore it's clear that we're not counting the misas adon. It must be we're counting yovel twice, and only one of the yovels applies to the Yom HaIvriya, and the other does not. And the Gemara continues, Mesiv Rav Amram. Rav Amram asks a question on Reish Lakish from the following brisa. Ve'elu ma'anikim lehem, the Brisa says in the following situations again, they get the gift of severance and they go free. Hayotze b'shanim uveyovel uvamisas ha'adon. So here it says the one who leaves after the 6 years and in the Yovel year and with the death of the master. V'yama ha'ivriya b'simonim, and it adds that by the Yama ha'ivriya she goes free with simonim, with signs of maturity. And so again the Gemara says, V'yimisa, if it's true what Reish Lakish says, that she goes free with the misas ha'av, with the death of her father, so nisni nami misas ha'av, so we should also have in this list the death of her father. And again the Gemara says, V'chitei matana v'shayar, if you're going to say that we left something out of this price, so really she does go free with the misas ha'av. V'elu katani, but again it says the word elu, it says these are, and that indicates we're not leaving anything out. V'chitei madavar sheyesh lo kitzva katani, davar shein lo kitzva lo katani, and if again you're going to suggest, you're going to say that we're only having things that have a set time, but we're not listing something like misas ha'av, which is not a set time. V'asimonim dein lem kitzva, but again, what about the signs of maturity? That doesn't have a set time. V'katani, and that's listed in this brisa. V'chitei mahachanami k'der Rav Safra, and if you're going to say, again, like we said, according to Rav Safra, that there is a set time by simonim, because there's a minimum age, but ha'ika misas adon, but over here in this brisa, one of the things in the list is the misas adon, is the death of the master. And so therefore, again, you see that we are listing things that is davar she'ein lo kitzva. We are listing things without a set time, and so therefore, again, we're back to our question. If that's the case, if we're already listing misas ha'adon, so then why don't we list as well the misas ha'av? And so the Gemara says tiyufta de Reish Lakish. Tiyufta, the Gemara says, is this a refutation of Reish Lakish? Indeed, it is a refutation of Reish Lakish. But the Gemara continues, Reish Lakish kal v'chomer omer, but Reish Lakish, he brought a kal v'chomer to prove his position. He made a kal v'chomer from simonim and said that shows that misas ha'av also should set her free. And the Gemara says to that, kal v'chomer prichi, that's a kal v'chomer that can be refuted. Mishum de'ikol l'mifrach, because we can refute it as follows, mal simonim shenishtana haguf, because what's unique about simonim, that her body has changed. Tomer b'misas ha'av, whereas when it comes to the misas ha'av, the death of her father, shekein lo nishtana haguf, there's no change in her body, and therefore you cannot learn out one from the other. And the Gemara continues, Tani Chada, we learned in one brisa, Enek Eved Ivri Liatzmo, that when the Eved Ivri goes free and he receives the severance gift, he keeps it for himself. The Enek Amo Hevriya Liatzmo, and the same thing is true by the severance gift for the Amo Hevriya, she keeps the gift for herself. But we learned in another brisa, Enek Amo Hevriya Umitziyasa Liavia, that the severance gift for an Amo Hevriya, and anything she finds, let's say she finds a lost object, that doesn't go to her, it goes to her father. Ve'ein l'rava l'schar batola bilvad, and in terms of her master, let's say she finds a lost object, so her master doesn't get the lost object, but he does get the wages, he does get the amount of value that she wasn't working at that time, instead she was finding this lost object, that's what her master gets in this situation. And the Gemara now says, my lav, is it not? How do we resolve these two brisas? In one brisa it says she gets the severance gift, and the other brisa it says the father gets the severance gift. So don't we say, nafka b'simonim? In one case we're talking about where she goes free with signs of maturity, and in that case it goes to her father. And in the other case, it's when she goes free with the death of her father, so there is no father, and that's why she gets the severance gift, and that would seemingly support Reish Lakish that she does go free with the death of her father. And the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Idi v'idi denafka la b'simonim. It could be in both cases we're talking where she goes free with signs of maturity. Velokashin, it would not be difficult. You can answer the contradiction in brises. Hadi iselav, hadi leselav. In one case we're talking where the father was alive. In one case the father had died, meaning the father had died, but that did not set her free. She went free with simonim. And the point is, if there's no father, so then the severance gift goes to her. And the Gemara continues, Bishlama enek amo hevriya liatzma. I understand why you need to teach us that the severance gift of an amo hevriya goes to her. Lemu'uteyach, and that comes to exclude her brothers. Maybe you could have said, again, we're talking where there's no father around, you might have thought it goes to her brothers. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Visnachaltam osam levnechem acharechem. It talks about the fact that the avodim is an inheritance to your sons, and we learn from there, osam levnechem velo ben osechem levnechem. They, the avodim, they go to your sons, but your daughters are not inherited by your sons. Mikan she'ein adam morish zechus bito levno. That shows that a person does not give the zechus, whatever zechus he had in his daughter, that zechus that he had in her property, etc., that doesn't go to his sons, that doesn't go to his son. And that's what we're saying over here as well, that the brothers are not able to get the severance gift, that goes to her, but we understand why that's a chiddush. Ela enek eved ivri liatzma, but the idea that the eved ivri, that he gets his enek, that he gets a severance gift, pshita, it's so obvious, why do you even need to teach it? Ela laman, who else would it go to? Amar Rav Yosef says, Yud keres kachazino hachai. See over here a Yud that's made into a large city. Rashi explains the reference. Yud keres, yud shi katana. A yud is a letter that's very small. Asa ir gedolin. It's made into a big city. That's an expression. Kolomar, the expression is as if to say, herich mishnas ochinam. You're right. This brisa was overly lengthy. There was no reason to teach this halacha of Eved Ivri. The brisa elaborated more than necessary, but it's obvious that an Eved Ivri receives his own severance gift. And the Gemara continues, Abaya says, Hachi Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says as follows to answer this question: why do we talk about the Enek Eved Ivri going to the Eved Ivri himself? Hamani Tutoihi. This brisa follows the opinion of Tutoi. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Tutoi Omer, Tutoi says, lo, when we're talking about the severance gift, it goes to him, v'lo lebal chovu. It doesn't go to the creditor. That's the chiddush. Let's say he owed someone else money. There's a creditor involved over here. That's the chiddush of the brisa. It doesn't go to that creditor. Rashi says, v'lo lebal chovu midesvir lon k'Rabbi Nasan, also lo afke k'defarishis la'el. Again, we hold like Rabbi Nasan that let's say one person owes someone money who owes someone else money, that it all goes to the original creditor, and that's what we're saying over here, that over here, the severance goes to the Eved Ivri himself. And the Gemara continues, Gufa, returning to the brisa we brought above, Eilu ma'anikim lahem, the following cases, we give them the severance gift, hayotze b'shanim, if he leaves after 6 years, uviyovel, or he leaves after yovel, uvamisas ha'adon, or with the death of the master, v'ama ha'ivriya b'simonim, and also the ama ha'ivriya if she leaves with signs of maturity, avol boreach v'yotze b'giron kesef, but let's say somebody runs away, or let's say somebody pays to redeem himself, in that case, ein ma'anikim lo, in that case, we don't give him the severance gift. Rabbi Meir says, Boreach ein manikin lo. If he runs away, he doesn't get the severance gift. However, v'yotze b'giron kesef, but if he redeems himself by paying money, manikim lo, so then he does get the severance gift. Rabbi Shimon says, this is the Rabbi Shimon from above, arba manikim lohem, there are 4 cases where they get the severance gift, shlosha b'ish v'gimel b'isha, 3 of them apply to the man, to the Eved Ivri, 3 of them apply to the woman, to the Amo Ha'ivriya, v'yata yachol omar arba be'echad mehen, you can't say that 4 apply to either of them, lefi she'ein simonim b'ish, because again, there's no signs of maturity, that doesn't allow the Eved Ivri to go free, u'ritzia b'ish, and there's no concept of ritzia, there's no concept of the piercing of the ear when it comes to the Amo Ha'ivriya. And the Gemara says, Menohani Mili, from where do we know all of this? Where do we have the sources for where we say that Hanukah applies and it doesn't apply? Tatanu Rabbanan, that the rabbis taught, Yachal lo yuhu manikim elo liyotze b'sheish. I might think that the concept of Hanukah, of the severance gift, only applies to someone who leaves after 6 years. Rashi points out that it's someone who leaves after 6 years, that's where it says, Hanek, that's where it says that you're going to give the severance gift, so I might think it only applies there. Minayin l'rabos yotze b'yovel. How do I know to include somebody who leaves with the yovel year? Uvemisa sa'adon, or somebody leaves with the death of the master. V'yama ha'ivriya b'simonim, or how do we know to include the yama ha'ivriya who leaves with the signs of maturity? Talmud lomar teshalchenu. The pasuk says teshalchenu, v'chisa shalchenu. The pasuk says v'chisa shalchenu, and Rashi says teshalchenu, v'chisa shalchenu trei zimnei. It says 2 times teshalchenu l'rabos. That all comes to include the other ways that they're sent away. Any way that they're sent away, they get the enek. They get, in those situations, they get the severance gift. And the Gemara continues, now I might think that I should also include someone who runs away, or somebody who pays to redeem himself. So Talmud lomer v'chisa shalchenu chafshi me'imach. It says in the pasuk that they're sent free from you. Misha shilucho me'imach. It has to be that they're sent from you. Yatsa boreach v'yotze b'giron kesef. That comes to exclude somebody who runs away, or somebody who pays money to redeem himself. She'in shilucho me'imach. Those individuals, they're not sent away from you. Rashi says she'in shilucho me'imach, meaning midaitcha. It's not you that's setting them free. The master isn't setting them free in those cases. Ela me'aleim. They're coming on their own, so to speak, and they're extracting themselves from the avdus. So in such a situation, there we already say there is no concept of a severance gift. Rabbi Meir says, Boreach ein manikin lo. When it comes to the Boreach, again, this is Rabbi Meir above, when it comes to the one who runs away, he doesn't get the severance gift. Because again, he's not being sent away from you. He's running away. But somebody who leaves by paying money to redeem himself, so over there, and they put in the words that manikin lo, that over there we do say that there is a severance gift, because that is considered shilucho meimach. That is considered a situation where he's being sent away from you. And Rashi explains sheshilucho meimach sheimekabel giron, because he's receiving that money, that's paying that redemption money, and then he sends him free. So according to Rabbi Meir, that is counted in the halacha of the severance gift. But the Gemara continues, Boreach, but you're talking about a situation of somebody who runs away. So Hashlama boy, doesn't he need to complete his years of service? What do we mean to say over here? It sounds like we're saying that somebody who runs away, that he's free, but that's not true. The Tanya is, we learned in a Brisa, Minayin leboreach shechayev lahashlam. From where do we know that somebody who runs away, that he needs to complete his years of service? Talmud Lomer, sheishanim yavo, the pasuk says 6 years he has to serve. Rashi says, Hashlama boy lahashlam sheish, he has to finish the 6 years. Ula'achar hashlam, and then furthermore, after he finishes, Hareu kiyotzi b'shanim, isn't he the same as somebody who leaves after the years of servitude? V'yaniku, so in that case we should say that he gets the severance gift. That's the question of the Gemara, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph.